Peterson climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Come
on! What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the UFC show, talking UFC 290 Saturday night pay-per-view card. It's a big one. We got a big crew here joining you today to break it all down. DFS, betting perspective, technical aspects, ownership, everything you need to get ready for UFC 290. I'm Draft Sheet, of course, joined as always by JSU, Red Kachik, and today, special guest Mad Lab joining us as well. 4-man booth. Going to be a fun show. Going to be a fun night of fights. No question about it. We'll go to you first, Mad Lab. How you doing on this Saturday morning, bright and early over there on the West Coast? I'm feeling it a little bit here in the Denver area, but certainly excited for UFC 290. How you doing, Mad Lab?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on again, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm ready to go. I love this card. You know, a lot of fun fights, a lot of upside for finishes on this card too, so I'm psyched.
Yeah, absolutely. We got 13 fights to talk about. We did lose one fight, one big favorite, but plenty more still left. We'll go to you next, JSU. How you doing on this Saturday morning?
Yeah, I'm going to try and keep this short here. We kept going on the pre-show, and then we were like, why aren't we just doing this live? So we kind of messed up. We should have started like 5-6 minutes ago, but we were all just talking, and then we were like, wait, this show's going to go forever anyways. But I am not in my normal digs. I'm in my parents' house right now. My house had no power because they're redoing a pole outside on the street that my power is connected to for my house. So I'm at the parents' house right now, and that's why it looks like I'm not in a big sauna, though. I'm in the wooden dining room that they're remaking right now, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we won't start this show with 45 minutes of BS like we did on the baseball show yesterday. People that watched that, it was a pretty funny time.
I think that might be the best show ever. Just throwing it out there. Like I turned it on and I was laughing for like 25 minutes straight. So Congrats to you, DC, and Mangone and everyone else on that show. It was a great show.
I had literal tears in my eyes for about 40 minutes straight to kick off that show. So that was certainly a fun time. Drew, last but not least, how you doing on this Saturday morning?
Yeah, doing good. I might be least. I'm holding up the hind tit on the picks head to head. So hopefully we can make a resurrection this week. And I'll give you a shout out, DC. I caught the end of your MLB show on Thursday, I think, with Third and Schlong, and your last home run call was Gunner first at bat. I figured I'd throw him in, check my lineups, and sure enough. Home run on the first
hit another one later in the game too. So certainly a fun day there, but we got plenty of fights to talk about. So we'll move on from the baseball for now and get right into the fights. First fight on the card that we will break down: Kirk and Esteban Ribovics. One of the more closely lined fights on this card. As I said, a lot of big favorites, but it is Ribovics sitting around minus 150 or so. Let's kick it off with you, Mad Lab. What do you see between these two?
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. You know, usually with the first fights of the night, it's interesting because they sometimes the guys are really on the way out. So it's almost like I call it the cliffhanger. They're like holding on. And then it's more low-level MMA. Kirk is a guy who he had higher hopes coming in. If you watch him on film, he's got some nice movement. He's got some nice fundamentals, but he tends not to really let the fist fly. He tends to really sit back. He looks, he's patient. He kind of picks and chooses his spots a little bit too much to a fault almost sometimes. So I think that's what's baked into the to the price here. As far as Ribovics, I like what I see out of him so far. He's really, really raw. You know what I mean? He does some nice things, but he does have some holes. But I do think that he lets the numbers fly with the leather a little bit more, which could really cause Kirk to, hesitate and pause and freeze. So I do see value both ways because I do see Kirk having, the fundamentals, and he is pretty well-rounded when he puts it all together. But Ribovics at 8,500, I think for me is a stronger play at that point. But first fights of the night, I don't know why. I've always been this way. I kind of sit back a little bit on them. I'm afraid like you shit the bet on that one, your night's kind of over. So I kind of go light on the first fight of the night. Because, like I said, they're either cliffhangers or it's real low-level MMA. But I think both guys hold their value, but I like Ribovics' value a little bit more, especially on probably a guy who's not going to be too highly owned.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. JSU, from a DFS perspective, like, no, if you're a one lineup guy or really, any individual lineup that you're making for DFS, there's just going to be some scary fades on this card, right? It's just kind of a nature of the slate. Like even this card, even the spike, which we'll get to Drew and ownership, I think it'll be a little bit lower owned. But even this one is like minus 250 to finish inside the distance. Both guys reasonably priced. What do you see between Ribovics and Kirk here?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ribovics is pretty solid, honestly. Like the fight against Loic, I mean, Loic tried like 20-something takedown attempts. He got like 11 of them. But the fact that Ribovics was getting up, now he was getting taken back down, but he was at least getting up. He showed some power. He had a knockdown in that fight against Loic. I think he showed some pretty good stuff there. And honestly, I'm not as high on Kirk. And like Mad Lab said, when you're a little afraid at times to go and stuff, I think Ribovics could stun him a little bit. And I really like this fight for DFS on a card where we've got some bangers. We've got some fights that a lot of people want to be invested in. And like Mad Lab said, the first fight of the night, I think from a DFS perspective, not a bad take to actually go a little heavier if you have a strong take on one side or the other, because I think a lot of people do view it similar to what Mad Lab said. We're like, hey, listen, if this first fight doesn't go your way, you might be shit out of luck early, and you might be, closing the laptop GIF early, at that point. So I'm pretty strong on Ribovics. I think the dude's talented. I think he showed a lot in the Loic fight, even though he was getting taken down. The fact that he kept getting back up, he was working, he showed power. I think that power is going to be on display here against Kirk, and I think it's going to be a finish for Ribovics. So, yeah, give me him. I'm definitely going to take him inside the distance here to get this done.
All right, 2 for 2 on Ribovics over Kirk. Let's go to you, Drew. What do you see for ownership on these two fighters in terms of DFS, and who's your pick for this fight?
Yeah, so I got Ribovics at 24% owned and Kirk around 20% owned, so relatively close. Yeah, I mean, Ribovics looks good on paper. I do think the way the lineup construction goes, depending on how the fight lays out, I could see a path where Kirk is in the optimal lineup. Vegas gives him pretty decent odds to finish via submission, relatively speaking, for an underdog on this card. So I do like Kirk here at 7,700 as a salary saver, but Ribovics would be my pick to win, would be inside the distance. But I do like Kirk in GPPs as a kind of like a top underdog, I guess, because there's definitely some punts, and I would consider Kirk a pretty live dog.
Well, makes sense. We'll move on to the next fight on the card. Shannon Ross and Jesus Aguilar going to do battle here. It is Aguilar. Very moderate favorite, sitting around minus 140. This one, just a small favorite to finish inside the distance. Let's go back to you, Mad Lab, for Aguilar and Ross. What do you see between these two?
Yeah, this is interesting. I've had a hard time laying a beat on this one because I can't figure out what the UFC wants to do with either of these guys. You got Shannon Ross, who's going to have a longer reach advantage. He gets knocked out in the Contender Series. He gets a call back. Usually on the Contender Series, if you lose, you're not getting a call. He gets a call back. He comes back. He loses again to Clitson Rodriguez, and now he's back again. So it's like, what do they want to do with him? And Aguilar, really, outside of his neck series, he's got a very, very good neck series. I think in 5-6 finishes, he's got like 4 or 5 guillotine chokes, which means he really understands. And I'm not a big advocate for guillotines. Usually after the first round, the guys get wet. It's a very high risk, high reward situation you put yourself in. But when you have a good neck series like him, where you can kind of like Brian Ortega, where you can transition off, you understand how to switch hands. You can go from a guillotine to a 10-finger choke. Like when you have that kind of bag under your thing for 15 minutes, I do like it. But Shannon Ross, he's got the longer reach. He's a better striker. Aguilar can be chinny. So I really can't put a beat on this one all that well. But from a DFS perspective, I think the angle, as far as from a finishing perspective, I like Aguilar, because he does like to jump the guillotines. He will jump a guillotine in the clinch. He will look for it in every fight. Even if he loses, he's going to go for it. So I do like him a little bit better on a DK perspective, but I can't lay a good hard beat on this fight.
Yeah, the guillotine thing, like to me, that feels like something that works probably a lot at lower levels, and then when you get to the UFC, you get people that learn how to defend it. JSU, I'm guessing you've been there, backing a fighter, rooting for a fighter. Nothing I hate more than when my fighter is trying to jump guard or pull guard, pull the guillotine, because it just doesn't work that often. It doesn't seem like. So Yeah, that kind of concerns me with Aguilar, but your thoughts here, Aguilar and Ross.
Well, I mean, it happened in the last fight, right, against Tyra, right? This dude, he throws one nice leg kick, low leg kick, drops Tyra real quick. Tyra bounces back up, throws another body kick, and then he just runs in and jumps on his neck. And, Tyra did a good job. He didn't panic. He kind of worked to the side a little bit, created some space. But he held that thing for like 2 minutes or something like that. He really tried to go for it. And then after that, he was just gassed. Like, that's what happens. That's the, give and take. That's the risk reward of a guillotine choke. If guys can withstand it and you're holding that thing for a long time, you're going to gas out your arms. And once you gas out your arms, man, it's really tough. So that's the thing here. But what I see with Aguilar, I'm a little more of a fan of him than I am of Ross. I mean, Ross, I watched him against Steven Erceg. Steven Erceg dropped him with a bunch of body shots. I mean, body shots have been killing this dude recently. Actually, 2 of his last 3 or 4 fights, he's gotten dropped by body shots. And then he jumped on an actual standing guillotine because he was mounted him and then kind of got his neck and finished the fight there. So Steven Erceg finished him, but it was really the body shots that did him in. And then he just finished. And then a few other fights where he was getting dropped multiple times. I just don't think Ross is very good. I think Aguilar is the better fighter, and I'll go with him to finish. But it's not something where I need one of these fighters in my DFS lineups. Yeah. But I could see Aguilar getting an early finish here. So,
yeah, certainly possible. I'm personally leaning on probably fading this fight for the most part in my DFS lineups. But let's go to you, Drew. Who do you see winning between these two, and what do you have for ownership and the numbers?
Yep. So I got Aguilar at 19% and Ross at 20%. So Ross is like a higher owned dog actually. But yeah, I do like Aguilar here. He's kind of at right off the break off tier for you pay up a little bit more, you get a little bit better money line number, a little bit better inside the distance numbers. So I think Aguilar is going to be kind of low owned to provide some decent leverage at 8,600. So yeah, I actually like Aguilar quite a bit. Vegas gives him a lot of respect to finish via submission, 30% chance inside of round 2. So I do like Aguilar in this fight. And I think for GPPs, he's just going to be forgotten. I think the tier, as you drop down off that 9K range, that 8,600, 8,500, the 2 fights we just talked about, they're going to be the lowest owned of the favorites. So yeah, I think Aguilar is really interesting here.
Yeah, makes sense. That's Aguilar, Ross. We'll keep moving to the next fight on the card. First big favorite of the night, and maybe first big decision DFS-wise as well. It is Cameron Saaiman, who is sitting around minus 550 to minus 600. Pretty big favorite to finish this one inside the distance over Terrence Mitchell. How do you see this one going down, Mad Lab?
Yeah, so I like this kid Saaiman a lot. I know he's young. I know he's raw. He does make some mistakes, but the kid's got such good fundamentals in his striking. He knows how to generate power, and he doesn't really have to load up. When you understand fundamentals of striking, you know how to swivel your feet, swivel your hips and stuff like that. It's almost like for the guys who watch baseball or play baseball, when you hit that ball on the perfect meat of the bat, you don't feel it in your hands. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the same thing when you really know how to properly throw a punch. And for such a young age, this kid really knows how to do that. This kid Mitchell, he lost to Kai Kara France back in 2016 in the Ultimate Fighter. He was knocked out. Ever since then, he vanished. He goes to the Alaskan Fighting Championships. Now, for those of you who don't know that, that's like as regional as it gets. I mean, everybody there, they all have like losing records, you know. So he went on a run. So now he comes back to the UFC. I just don't think that. I think this kid is literally a placeholder for this card. I do like Saaiman to knock this kid out. And I actually do like him on DraftKings, especially with guys that are so high priced. You may get some people that never heard of this kid. They all know the Bo Nichols. They all know, you know, the guys up in the 9,000 range. But a lot of the people outside of us who watch all the fight nights and stuff like that, people who are just pay-per-view people, they don't know who this kid Saaiman is. You know what I mean? So this might be a good area to, you know, if you're looking to get off that, the high end of Bo Nickel, you're looking to make some waves. This kid does have the potential to have a first-round KO, and all the numbers in Vegas show it too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Mitchell's going to be overmatched here against Saaiman. I'm expecting the early finish JSU, but what do you see here between these two?
Yeah, I see kind of what Mad Lab was talking about. I don't want to just hit on all the points that he talked about, but the best point he made was, someone that maybe less people are talking about. People see these other, favorites, big favorites like Bo Nickel, like some of these other guys that we'll talk about later on in the main events and stuff, and the names they know, right? And they'll be like, okay, I'd rather back those guys. So maybe there's a little ownership gap. I don't know. Drew can talk about maybe possible ownership gap. I don't know, though, because of the fact that I do feel like a lot of people think he is somewhat of a, guy who could finish this pretty early here. But I agree. I think this is a finish early. I think it's a first round finish, honestly. I think he knocks him out. So I'm with Mad Lab 100%.
Yeah, I think we'll see an early finish as well. Drew, what do you see between Simon and Mitchell?
I got Simon at 30% and Mitchell at just under 10%. I will say, to JSU's point, there's not a huge discrepancy in ownership between Nickel down to Simon. And I looked through the projections across the industry, and everyone is basically tiered up on Nickel to Tyra to Simon. So, I think ownership-wise in optimizers for the big GPP, they're all going to be around 30%, to be fair. Yeah. So, it really comes down to lineup construction. But, yeah, Simon, no-brainer. I mean, Simon just looks like he's across the board so much better. He's going to finish probably inside of round 1 with a KO. He grades out well. I mean, all the top guys grade out well if they're all going to be 30% owned. It's just who can get 140 points or 130 points possibly. So, same as my pick, and I'm cool fading Mitchell. I don't see really a path where he could sustain Simon through one round, probably not 2 or 3.
It could also be the fact that we use that as people know these favorites. Well, also the dogs in the main events, people know those guys too. So it could also be that where, the ownership from those fights where people are going to play the dogs because they're cheap and they're good fighters and people know them. So maybe that's why there's not as much of a discrepancy. There might be some as we get to the main event fights then.
For sure. We'll keep it moving. Next fight on the card, Vitor Petrino, minus 240-ish favorite over Marcin Prachnio. This fight, another one that is pretty heavily favored to finish inside the distance, kind of a common theme early and frankly throughout this card. Let's go back to you, Mad Lab, for Petrino and Prachnio. Who do you got here?
This is interesting because this is really all how Petrino enters the pocket on this fight. Prachnio, I have a good history with him. The first time he fought in the UFC, he fought Sam Alvey. I don't know if you remember that. And he was like one of the highly owned guys. He was like a big prospect coming in. And we were all over Sam Alvey in that fight. And I have the picture. I was actually at my mother's house eating pasta when Sam Alvey knocked him out. But when you look at the issues that Prachnio has had in the previous past, it's his chin. We all know it's his chin. The guy can be, he got knocked out like 3 fights in a row. Then he came back. But why is he winning now? Why is he tougher now? Because he realized that he doesn't have a chin. Your legs are longer than your arms. And basically what he's been doing, he's just been relying on his leg kicks to keep you honest and to keep you fair. And that's the only thing that scares me with this fight. Not that Petrino, doesn't have the upside to finish him, but what if Prachnio keeps him on the outside and constantly stings him and starts cashing these leg kicks and he doesn't want to enter the pocket, or he gets to the point where he doesn't have the legs under him anymore really to crash the pocket. So it's really how Petrino enters this fight. Is he going to crash the pocket quick and, go for a takedown or, not just understand how to check leg kicks? Or is he going to sit at the outside with him and Prachnio starts banking these leg kicks and the fight starts dragging longer and longer and longer, and then his value starts fading. So I do think there's value on Petrino because the guy's a unit, bro. The guy's jacked, the guy's fast, explosive. He does have wrestling in his back pocket, but there is a cause of concern for me with Prachnio with the way he's been, serving leg kicks to people lately. It's like he's throwing more leg kicks than punches. It's crazy. But I do think there's value on Petrino at 9,000. But like I said, it's all predicated on how he enters this first 2 minutes of the fight for me.
Yeah, I think this one is interesting, JSU, from a DFS perspective. Obviously, Petrino not as big a favorite as some of the others that we're going to talk about, especially in that 9K plus range. But in his first UFC fight, he did get 7 takedowns. It had a huge score. I think if it goes his way, Petrino's way, probably going to put up a big score. And then on the other side with Prachnio, he's not really a high DFS type scorer, right? With his style, not a lot of takedowns, that type of thing. But because of the nature of this card, like any win from an underdog might be enough, right? It could get there in the end. So I think this is an interesting one. I certainly lean Petrino, but interested to hear your thoughts.
Well, Mad Lab kind of laid it out, right? The reason why he's not a great DFS scorer right now is because he knows he's chinny, so he's starting to stay on the outside. He's being smarter, right? He's using his leg kicks, staying at range, and that's how he wants to fight. And so the question is just, can he dictate the fight, or can, Petrino dictate the fight? Will Petrino, get into the pocket, or maybe uses wrestling if, that's the case and something like that. But I agree with Mad Lab. The longer this fight goes, it's like, okay, how well is this fight going to score? Can Prachnio actually, do enough damage to where it's a close, maybe decision at the end of the day? And if it goes to the cards, that's the one thing I worry about. But we've seen Petrino, at least from a DFS side, he has the high upside to score well. That is the good thing. Even if the fight goes 3 rounds, he could have a bunch of takedowns. But I could also see this fight staying at range. I kind of feel like it might, actually. And so I'm lower on this fight from a DFS perspective, just for that reason. There's a lot of good 9K fighters. I feel like Petrino, even if he does score, 100+ points, I think Saman can. I think Bo Nickel can. There's a lot of other. I think Volk can for sure. So we'll get into more fighters. But so this fight's going to be a fight that I'm probably under on than the field on both sides. And just I'll roll with it that way because you can't play all these fights even if you're maxing. You still got to be under on some fights. And this is just a fight I'm going to fall under on.
Yeah, makes sense. Drew, let's go to you for Petrino and Prachnio. What do you have for the numbers ownership-wise, and who's your pick for this one?
Yeah, I got Petrino at 30% as well, and Prachnio at 15%. So, yeah, I think the interesting numbers that stand out to me is Petrino's KO rate is actually, or Vegas number is actually higher than Saman for round 1 or round 2. Saman has a little bit more respect on a possible submission, but I think this fight could potentially break the slate in a way. I think Petrino, if he comes out and Vegas has given him a lot of respect, and at 9K, if he outscores any of the guys at Saman or above, I think that's optimal. But I think Petrino is going to be, 30% owned right at 9K. I could see him getting in a KO in round 1, and he's actually lower owned than what it's projected at. So I like Petrino quite a bit here. Prachnio as a sprinkle, I'm totally fine with. Hate to say play everyone, but I do see a path where Prachnio at 15% can do some work and get a win here. But I think Petrino has a lot of upside, even at Saman's level. So I think Petrino is really interesting.
Yeah, makes sense. That's Petrino, Prachnio. We'll keep it moving to the next one. 2 UFC veterans. Up next, Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Menifield. This one very closely lined. It is Crute as a small favorite, sitting around -140. Back to you, Mad Lab. Crute, Menifield. What do you see here?
Fight of the dum-dums, I call this.
Yeah,
don't grab the fucking cage.
I mean, really, the fight of the fucking dum-dums here. So you got Alonzo Menifield, who his dum-dum move was obviously grabbing the cage. He lost that fight in their first. He was on his way to winning the fight. Jimmy Crute's dum-dum move was that he had a clear path to beating him, which was grapple, and he decided to have a jock measuring contest with him in strike. First round, Jimmy Crute looked great, and then near the end of the second round, he ends up getting dropped. He actually got saved by the horn in that fight. He got literally folded. So instead of learning his lesson, he comes back out in the third round. He decides to have a jock measuring contest with him. So both of these guys, but then he grabbed the cage. So both of these guys, when you have Jimmy Crute that's getting takedown after takedown in that fight, but still doesn't realize that's my path, that's an issue. That's a wiring issue inside the cage. Alonzo Menifield obviously doesn't know, where his surroundings are. So anyone who really thinks they have a great beat on this fight, I don't see how. The only thing I will say with this fight is it's priced very, very good for 2 guys that have good finishing upside. And the reason why I lean on the Crute side is because if you look at both of their paths, if you look at when they were on their feet, Jimmy Crute was serviceable and competitive on the feet, where I think on the ground, I don't think Alonzo Menifield can compete with him once it hits the ground. So there's a stronger path for Jimmy Crute. I like both of their prices, though, at 8,200, 8,000. I think it's a really good play. I think you could be looking, at a finish in this fight, either, maybe a submission by Jimmy Crute or a knockout by Menifield. one of these guys are going to make some kind of boneheaded mistake in there that's going to cost them the fight. But I do think this is a fight that I will target. It's like that meat right in the middle of the sandwich.
Well, let's stick here with you, man, just for a second, because obviously this is the rematch. Jimmy Crute's coaches, right? I mean, when you look back at that tape and Crute sees how many takedowns he was able to easily get, I mean, I would think surely his game plan in this fight, would be just to go back to the takedowns, right, and finish the job that he.
Did he freeze, or is that me?
What's that?
I think he froze.
Yeah, well, you're the one in the fight game, so yeah. What do you think for?
Yeah, so here's the thing: the problem that I've noticed, and listen, sometimes it is the corner, 1,000%, but it's not always the corner. You got to remember, and it's happened to me with people sometimes where I would literally be talking to them, I would tell them what to do. They're looking me right in the eyes, dude. Yes, 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 and then they go out, and once you're in there, you forget your blueprint, dude. Yeah. Once you get hit, once you get taken down, once you're in a little bit of chaos, you forget your blueprint, and it's kind of just forgotten and lost. So sometimes it's the corner. Yeah, sometimes they just, we say it all the time. We're like, what the fuck are they doing? But sometimes it's the fighter. The fighter, they're not listening in there. They're not, they just, it's almost like a fight or flight thing. You know what I mean? So yeah. Jimmy Crute, I don't know. Jimmy Crute, I really can't tell you if that was a corner or him, but he doesn't need his corner to tell him that. To tell him, look, I'm having success on the ground. I'm taking him down. He can't stop my takedowns, but I'm going to have a jock measuring contest with a guy with knockout power. You don't need your corner to tell you that,
Yeah. Well, yeah, that all makes sense.
I got something because so the first round of that fight, Jimmy Crute, in my opinion anyways, he tried to wrestle and get that to the ground almost like he needed to. It was instantly the first couple minutes. And I think what happened was he almost got a little tired. And then they stood. Alonzo was a little better. He felt the power of Alonzo. Then in the second round, Alonzo rocked him. Like you said, he got saved. But one thing Alonzo did with 2 minutes left or 2.5 minutes left, he hit him. Jimmy Crute went back to the cage. Jimmy Crute was dazed. Dude, you could see it in his eyes. He didn't get knocked down, but if the cage wasn't there, he was going down. Cage saves him. And Alonzo, instead of not rushing in, and staying at range and waiting for him to come back to hit him, runs in and grabs him and just hugs him. That has to be your gas tank, right? In a way, because in my mind, if he just stayed away from grabbing him, he finishes him there with 2 minutes and 20 seconds left in the second round easily. Because Jimmy Crute was done. You could see it in his eyes at that point. He was out. But why would if you're fighting someone who wants to get you to why are you grappling him? Why are you trying to get his back and hit him and doing all that stuff? Dude, you have the advantage, the power advantage on your feet. That has to be the same thing, right? Because his coaches have to be telling him something similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, there's so many different ways you can look at it. You can look at the way, Draft Sheet was looking at it. You can look at that from a cardio perspective. Some people think that when you're watching on TV, if you're laying and praying, you're getting your energy back, you're getting your head back, but you also got to expend energy getting the guy down. Yeah. Because sometimes when you're standing on your feet and your hands are down, you're a little bit labored. You think you're getting your air back. There's so many different ways you could look at it. Sometimes your legs are so peppered up that if you sit down, you go down, how am I going to get back up? So there's so many different things to view in there. But this to me, I'll give you an example. I like to watch interviews on these guys, right? I like to see where their head is. I'm into the real psychological and mental thing. There's a reason why these guys have psychiatrists and stuff, sports medicine doctors, that they got confidence issues. Look at Cowboy Cerrone. Can't win the big fight. So I like to watch our interview. So I was watching an interview with Crute, and he was saying how he was going to change in things, and he's been making mistakes and this and that. It turned out it wasn't even for this fight coming up. This was for the Menifield fight, the first one. So I was like, what did he change? What did he work on mentally? What did he work on? He didn't work on anything. So it's I just think once he gets in there, bro, it doesn't register with him.
Yeah. Okay. That's what it looks like to me. Even in the second round when he was trying to bang with him, Jimmy Crute's legs, you could tell they were wobbly, he was standing kind of weird. You could just tell his knees wanted to give out, but he was tough. He's tough. He was trying to stay.
Worst feeling in the world, bro. That's the worst feeling in the world. That's worse than anything. When you like your legs start getting weak to the point where your knees buckle, like your legs go perfectly straight, like you can't get that flexation anymore. It's a terrible feeling, dude.
It kind of looked like he was trying to bend them, but like it was wobbly when he was doing it. But he was trying not to get to the point like you were talking about where they go straight and then you feel like
What's your pick here in this fight, JSU?
I'm going Menifield. I just think the power is going to be too much. I agree with Mad Lab, though. If Jimmy Crute finds a way to get him on his back, that is definitely where he's going to have success. I just think the power is going to be too much. I think Menifield, the fact that he stung him, Crute felt the power, maybe it makes him a little cautious, too, about, like, coming in. You know what I mean? Rushing in on him. And I think Menifield gets it done here inside the distance. But it's a good fight for DFS the way it's priced. I agree with Mad Lab. A finish here or a bunch of takedowns from Crute, either one's going to score well in a win. Whether, the decision Menifield win won't score as well probably, but like a Menifield KO or decision win from Crute with a bunch of takedowns for DFS is good. So I think this is a good fight to target.
Yeah, I do as well. Drew, we'll go to you for the numbers. Curious what they are for this one. I think Crute especially has, frankly, slate breaking upside if he uses the wrestling in this one with a bunch of takedowns, control time, maybe some ground and pound. Obviously not too expensive at 8,200. But what do you have for the numbers here between Menifield and Crute?
Yeah, I got Crute at 29% and Menifield at 21.5%. Yeah. So, yeah, I think this is like a key part to the entire slate is getting this fight right in the right lineups. I really I'm glad to hear Mad Lab say, it's hard to have a really good pulse on this fight because that's kind of what I see across the board. I think it's priced really fairly. I think ownership is pretty fair. If anything, I would say Menifield has a slight edge in ownership, just being like 7% lower with, inside the distance numbers being about 25% inside around 22% inside around one. So I kind of lean Menifield just from an ownership perspective, but like I said, I think both of these guys need to be in your player pool, and they're both probably going to be one of them is going to be on the optimal lineup most likely.
Yeah, I agree with you on Menifield and Crute. Should be an interesting one on the rematch there. We'll keep it moving to the first women's fight on the card, Denise Gomez and Yasmin Jargui. Another big favorite here. Jargui sitting at -400. This is, though, the first fight that we've talked about that is actually favored to go the distance. Back to you, Mad Lab, for Gomez and Jargui. What do you see between these two?
I like Jags, man. I like her boxing. I think she's very, very slick. She's got a lot of volume. She holds a good steady state. She just really no drop off with her. The price tag for me, though, is a little steep because when you have female MMA, you really got to put it on somebody to get a finish. You know what I mean? So it's a little tough for me. But when you look at Gomez, I see a lot of people, believe it or not, that are saying that there could be an upset here, and I understand what they're saying to a point. You know what I mean?
Can she wrestle?
She's Gomez a dog, bro. Yeah. Right? What's that?
Yeah, Gomez wrestling, I think, is her path. No. Yeah,
but she's a dog, dude. She's like when you have someone like Jags who's a range striker. What is the path is to crash the pocket, whether you're going to clinch with them, take them down, whatever. You just want to clash the pocket because you want to take their range away. And that's a point I'm going to make in another fight that we talk on the main card, but that's her path. And if that's what she's going to do, fine. But Jags' boxing, if you really, really watch the way she moves, the way she kind of goes north and south, east and west, she's moving all the time. It's really hard to lay a beat on her. My only issue with this fight, it's not if she wins this fight. My only issue is she going to do enough to score 9,300? That's my only issue. The great thing about it is if she does, and the people that do roster, if she gets like a second round knockout or something out, with one round the volume, and then she knocks her out in the second round, then fantastic. But when you're dealing with female like beginner lower level female MMA, it's a hard thing to trust a $9,300 play. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like teetering back and forth because I know there is upside because the ownership in the 9K range will probably be a little bit lower, but it's a tough call because I forgot somebody. I think you just said it now. This is picked to go to the cards, and I have to agree. I think this one's trending towards the cards.
Yeah, makes sense. JSU, let's go to you for this one. Your thoughts on Jargui and Gomez?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it goes to the cards. One, because, I mean, Gomez is kind of tough. I mean, like, she's going to move forward. Like Mad Lab said, it's all going to come down to when she closes the distance. My thing is, though, when she closes the distance, like, Yasmin's fine in the pocket. Like, she's fine to be there. She's comfortable. She's going to throw. She's got power. And it's not going to scare her. It's like she's not going to get intimidated by that at all. She's going to live there. She's fine with that. So, maybe she gets a few knockdowns because Gomez is tough. Like maybe she gets a few knockdowns, and that's how she scores well too. She gets a few knockdowns, and then somehow, like Mad Lab says, second or third round gets a finish. She could score well for DFS, but it's just more like we've got so many good 9K plays on this card that I feel just more confident in. I don't know if I want to put that much into the women's 9K, so it might just be honestly for DFS, dog or pass. Because, Gomez is cheap, but I don't know how much Gomez I'll even have because I do like another dog that we'll get to a little bit, or one or two more dogs that are cheap as we get into this main card, the main fight. So, yeah, I mean, I'll probably be lower again on this fight, but not going to have much of the 93 Yasmin.
Yeah, that's where I'm sitting as well. Drew, we'll go to you for the numbers, but for me, 9,300 Yasmin. I think she's got a tough path to get to the optimal at that price and her fighting style. I do think, though, Gomez, whether or not she can get the job done is obviously up for debate. But if she does, I think she's got a really, really good chance to end up on the optimal, both because of her price and because of her fighting style. I think Gomez probably ends up scoring decently well in the decision. So I do like her a little bit from a DFS perspective. Well, let's go to you, Drew, for the numbers between these two.
Yeah, I have Yasmin at 20%, so definitely going to be the lowest of the 9K favorites. And then Denise Gomez actually at 20%. So
yeah, people are putting some.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like to y'all's point, the people already know the algorithms know that the women's underdogs are where the ownership goes. So yeah, Gomez is going to be fairly owned. But yeah, I think Yasmin is going to be 20%, the lowest owned. I think that's over owned, to be fair, on this card. So 9,300 for her, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand
that philosophy though. Like I like when it comes to Jags not covering, I get it, but she's far and away the better fighter. So why would they pivot over to Gomes? Like it doesn't like that philosophy. I do understand, I guess, because it's looking to trend toward the cards. Anything can happen with the judges and stuff like that. I never understood that philosophy. Like, yeah, okay, maybe they're not going to score well, but I'm going to pick the other side. You know what I mean?
I think they're fading the 9K, and they're almost like rooting for the dog in a way, right, Mad Lab?
Of course, yeah.
9K, so they're almost like, okay, let me just take the shot on the dog because I want to play other 9K guys with upside. So I'm essentially rooting for Yasmin to lose or to score really bad and a win, but why not just take some of the dog in DFS is probably the way. But that's why, from an ownership play, if she's going to be 20% too, I might just not play either of them. Like 20%. That's hope she loses in a bad scoring fight all around.
I think they think it's going to go to decision, and Gomez has a decent chance, I guess, of winning through a decision, and she's cheap and to make the high price fighters go. But I think honestly, you could scratch this fight off and feel pretty comfortable. Like you talked about, there's some scary fades. I feel like this will be the least scary fade on the entire card, is to fade this women's fight.
I can already see the Twitter tilt coming with Yasmin deserving winning, and the judges get it wrong and give it to Gomez, and she ends up on the optimal, something like that. Feels like it could go down with this fight, but we'll keep it moving to another huge favorite on this card, Tatsuro Tyra, minus 1,000 against Edgar Charez. It is Tyra who is undefeated, 3 wins in a row, last 2 inside the distance, both by submission. He's certainly been impressive and obviously a huge favorite to keep that run going. Let's go back to you, Mad Lab, Tyra and Charez. What do you see here?
Yeah, so, this fight's interesting to me, and this is the one fight. I'm high on this kid. I like this kid because obviously from a business perspective, the UFC loves the Asian market. They want to really tap into that as much as they can. There's a lot of money on that market side. So that anytime they have an opportunity or anytime they get a kid like this, like back in the day, I don't know if you guys remember. Do you remember Takanori Gomi, the Fireball kid?
Yep.
Okay, so that kid, bro, back in the day, he was like the guy. You know what I mean? So they're looking for that. They got like the female version, but they want the male version. You know, and they're looking at this kid that he might be it. You know, the problem with him is he's a little. You know, he's younger. He's going to make mistakes. His striking is yet to be desired. Edgar Charez is a guy who's not good. He's most likely going to lose this fight, but he has the ability to kind of stay safe in all spots for at least a little while. And that's what scares me in this fight. It's not the point that is Tyra going to lose the fight? Is he not going to submit him? Is Charez going to do enough to kind of stay safe, to kind of make fucking his value shit to bed? You know what I mean? Because he is young. He doesn't just charge the pocket right away. He doesn't just go for a takedown. Sometimes he does try to stand with you. And like I said, Charez isn't really great in any one spot, but he's decent in all spots. He has a little bit of every spot covered. So is he going to do enough to stay safe, to like maybe go into the second round? That's what scares me in this fight. If he's going to be able to escape the second round. I do like this kid. I do like his upside from a fighting perspective, but a $9,600 price tag, I consider that like treading Khabib Nurmagomedov waters anytime you start hovering around that price range. So if you have that much confidence that he's going to get it done in round one, great. But my fear is it goes into round two before he gets it done. So that's my only concern here, but I do like this kid and I am high on him.
Yeah, he hasn't scored super well, JSU, even in the last two wins. You know, good scores, but both below 110 at 9,600. That might be enough, but it also might not. So another big decision point here on Tyra at the as a huge favorite, but also very pricey for DFS. What are you planning to do here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we got so many 9K fighters here, so many good ones, big favorites, right? It could be what Drew says. It could come down to like who scores 140 and who scores 120, you know, like, or 130 or something like that. That's honestly what it could come down to. But this is probably another guy where I'm gonna also beat lower on, just because I kind of like Charez as a fighter. I respect him at least as a tough dude who could definitely get through a round or two, like Mad Lab said. And I think, honestly, he's a little dangerous. Like, on the feet, Tyra, like Mad Lab said, well, I think Charez is kind of dangerous. He throws that, like, high knee, even when he's backing up, too. It's kind of nice where you get him on the back foot, and then all of a sudden he jumps straight up, and that knee comes right up at you. He's done it a few times. He has a nice little front kick. I think at the least, he can withstand a round or two where, for me, I'm going to take out Tyra and I'm going to play more of the dog here. And I'm going to take my shot on him. I just think he's dangerous. He'll throw some spinning stuff. He's got some nice things. Like Mad Lab said, nothing's like amazing, but he's dangerous enough. He has power. I've seen him rock a bunch of dudes with honestly punches where he's not even loading up, like little check left hooks where he's just kind of in and out, and then boom, he hits them. And I just think he's good enough to give this dude Tyra a tough test here, honestly. So give me the dog in this one. I'll take my shot that Charez gets it done. Hopefully he can stay off the ground. That's the key here. I've seen him on his back too. He'll throw elbows off his back. He'll try and get submissions, stuff like that. But, if he does get down, that's where he's going to have an issue for sure.
JSU grabbing his balls.
I'll just take it. Look at that.
Listen, we said it at the top.
I gotta be like you though, Mad Lab. I gotta get myself a pink and blue. What is that cup you're drinking? I gotta get one of those.
Fucking say something about that, dude.
I gotta get one of those, bro.
Bro, I went
that's
to Home
alpha
Goods.
shit right
color
there.
They had. It's the only color
dude, that's alpha shit. When I can drink out of something like that, I'll feel like a man.
I got that though.
There you go.
That keeps.
Listen, if you're built like Lab, you can drink out of whatever color container.
That's right.
I knew one of you guys were going to say something.
Yeah,
because JSU's thinking something different, but he's saying it out loud. It looks good, man.
Yeah.
I am not saying that out loud. That is out. If you can drink out of that cup, then you're an alpha. That's 100% fact.
Only at home though.
Drew, let's throw it over to you. Ownership wise, obviously, if Charez gets the job done like JSU thinks he has a chance to, that's going to propel you a long way. I assume Tyra is going to have some ownership and probably low owned on Charez. Yeah.
Yeah. Charez. Yeah. You take the 20% off of Gomez and go down to Charez, and he's at 6.5%. So, yeah, pretty good drop there. And
who's
Tyra,
6.5%?
I got Charez around 6.5%.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant Tari. I was like, what?
No. Tara's at 30% as well.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't love it. If I mean, from an optimizer standpoint, it's different. But like when I started looking at it, just hand building, the upside for nickel is a little bit better than Tyra, and you got to find the $200 extra, but you could find it somewhere on the card. But for Tyra, there is a path where he doesn't get 140. There's a path where he does, but there's, like DC just said, he doesn't score. He hasn't scored that well. And like I said, he grades out significantly worse from a leverage spot if nickel's also going to be 30% or just over 30%. So in Tyra, I'll be lower on, and a Charez, I wasn't planning to have much, but JSU talked me into it. And honestly, it doesn't take much. 6%, give me 10%, 12%, and a little bit overweight the field. But I have a little bit of serious salary savings, and it's a very little ownership that I had to allocate. So I'm lower on Tyra, and I guess I'll add a little Charez, but I still think Tyra wins this via submission in round 2, most likely.
All right. Let's get to the final fight on the prelim card. Two longtime veterans here, Nico Price and Robbie Lawler, obviously been around forever. It is Price who is a decent favorite, sitting around minus 220. This one also pretty big favorite to finish inside the distance. Start to you, Mad Lab. You've been watching these guys fight a while. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, first, I was a little insulted by them not putting this on the actual pay-per-view card, on the main card. But then I was thinking about it last night when I was laying in bed, and I was like, you know what? They might have done this so everybody can see it, so it's not behind like that paywall at first. It's like more publicized. It will drag people over to the pay-per-view.
They definitely want the final fight on the prelims to be an exciting one for sure.
Right, exactly. So you have Robbie Lawler, who's been with the company since he was like 18 years old. I mean, which is crazy. I mean, then he went to Strikeforce, back and forth. But he, the kid is really ageless. I mean, if you look them on the scales, 41 years old, the kid's still in shape. His body has never declined. I don't know where he's getting so disrespected here. Like when they put this fight together, you got to remember they want Robbie Lawler to go out in Robbie Lawler fashion. So they want him to have an exciting fight, but they're not going to give him anybody he doesn't have a shot against. Not a guy like Robbie Lawler, who they love and he's done so much for the company. They don't want him walking away, getting knocked out or on a loss. They want him to win this fight. You know what I mean? So when I look at the price and I look at what people are saying, and you go through like the people, I look at the losses. He lost to Barberena. He lost to Magny. He lost to Covington. Like he's lost to all studs. And then when you took at Nico Price, like he lost to Rowe. He lost to Pieta. He lost to Luque. That's a tough fight. But the competition that these guys have faced is not even on the same stratosphere. You know what I mean? So it's like Robbie Lawler knows how to get out of bad situations. He knows. Look what happened with the Ben Askren fight when he got put into that situation. Even though he got bulldog choked, he never tapped out. He knows that, and he will firefight. And this guy's going to come in for one more dance, and he's going to throw hands. So for him at this price tag, it's honestly insulting to look at 7,300. I mean, you're getting Robbie Lawler in his retirement fight against a guy who loads up on everything he does. If it connects, fantastic. But Robbie Lawler is not a fighter that's ever going to go quiet into the night. I don't care if he's 35 or I don't care if he's 45. So if $7,300, if you're telling me you're giving me Robbie Lawler at a borderline punt play, I'm interested. So I'll look at that.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. JSU's Lawler's not a super high score typically in DFS, even if his wins, right? Because you're not going to get any wrestling, any of the points there. But at 7,300, if he gets the job done, if he gets a knockout or maybe even a decision win, it might be enough on this card. So your thoughts, Lawler and Price?
I mean, it absolutely could be enough when you got all these 9K guys too. And this dude is going to stand and bang. He wants to go out with a bang, right? Like Mad Lab said. So this is not going to be something where like this dude's not timid. He's going to go in there. He wants the firefight too. That's what he wants. And who knows? Price might just give it to him, honestly. And that's, in my opinion, almost advantage Lawler because we've seen him in all those tough spots, like just be okay. So I'm with that 100%. You give me 7,300, Robbie Lawler. They want him to go out here the right way, honestly. I hope he does too because I've been watching Robbie Lawler pretty much his whole career, and I love the dude. He's the man. I just love the way he fights too. He's just, fight down and just go right in there, and he'll just crack with anyone, bang with anyone. So I love him. I hope he gets it done here. I'm going to play him in DFS because, like you guys said, 7,300. Take my shot. We need some dogs here. We need to pick a few dogs to make these lineups work. So give me Robbie Lawler here to get this done.
Yeah, I like it. I assume, Drew, that Lawler might be one of the more popular dogs. Obviously, he's a very well-known fighter. He's not a huge underdog here. People like watching him fight. I assume will get some ownership. But what do you have for the numbers between these two?
A little bit. He's not going to be crazy chalk as a dog. I got Lawler at 18%, so lower than some, but I mean he's right in the mid range, higher than some of the others around him. But and then for price, I have him at 29%. We'll call it. So yeah, Nico Price is probably my least favorite of anybody in that high 8s and low 9s. Low 9s probably don't even include that, but the high 8s, Nico Price just doesn't grade out that well at the ownership. And honestly, I like what I'm hearing about Lawler. So I'll probably have a nice sprinkle of Lawler. I don't have him as a significant value at his ownership, but it sounds like JSU and Mad Lab have a little higher respect for him than Vegas does. So yeah, I'll probably be pretty low on price overall in my player pool, and Lawler I'll bump up a bit.
Dude's been in the UFC for what, 22 years, Mad Lab?
Bro, since he was 18 years old, back and forth, and he's 41. I mean, that's fucking insane. And his body's not beat up.
Yeah, 4 of us will be rooting on Robbie Lawler here in his final fight in the UFC. We'll get to the main card, final 5 fights. Before we do, just a reminder, hit the like button if you haven't done so. We bring you guys this show free of charge each and every week. It does help us out if you hit the like, hit the subscribe to get all of our content here on the YouTube channel. And if you do want to join the winner's circle over at Run Pierce Sports, we do have a promo code going right now, Summer33. We'll get you 33% off your first weekly or monthly payment. Mad Lab, why don't you take a minute to let the people know where to find you and your content?
Yeah, you can go to the madlabmma.com. We cover everything DFS, wagers, boxing. We're running a promo this week for the special, $14.99. There's no promo code involved. You just have to go onto the website. You'll see the image. Click on the image. It'll direct you right to the page. So we pretty much do everything from soup to nuts. We haven't done our live stream yet. So if you guys want to check us out for the week, you haven't missed that yet. We do that about an hour and a half before the fights.
All right. Good stuff from Mad Lab there. Let's get to the pay-per-view portion of this card. And we kick it off with, I don't know, maybe one of the top prospects to enter the UFC in a long time, wrestler Bo Nickel. I can't remember seeing a big a favorite as Bo Nickel is in this fight. Minus 3,000. Mad Lab, just a monster favorite. Obviously, DFS, you're paying for it. He's 9,800, but obviously the market does not expect a very competitive fight here between Nickel and Val Woodburn. I'm guessing you're on the Nickel side here, Mad Lab, but talk to us about these two.
Yeah, so, listen, Nickel's going to end up losing a fight. I'm just waiting for the right spot to fade him. I think the masses, a lot of the casuals that just know the name Nickel, they're all over this guy. You know what I mean? And that's always going to be cooked into Vegas and stuff like that. But he's going to end up losing. I'll let you guys know that now. Eventually, there's going to be the spot where I'm going to pick against this guy. But right now, they have him on a very, very tight leash. So what do you do to make him look okay? You bring in a guy who's pretty jacked, who's 7-0, 5 KOs, but has 0 wrestling ability. Claims he trains with Rodolfo Vieira and stuff like that. But then when they ask him, how do you fare with him? He kind of gave the guys all blank stares, which means he probably gets strangled to death every time he rolls with Rodolfo. But the guys, it's a fight, though. That's the thing. I never like to say fade because it's a fight, dude. It's a fight, bro. I mean, Nickel can take a shot, and this guy can just throw a blind uppercut and knock him out, and then you're there. So the chances of that happening are extremely slim. He's the highest favorite in UFC history. I do like him to win this fight. He'll probably more than likely get a first-round sub. But we talked about it off the air before we started. There's a gray area in this fight for me, and I could be dead wrong. But for me, I've been thinking about it all week. At $9,800, if he doesn't get that submission within the bonus, but say he gets it maybe 10, 20, 30 seconds after that time, where is his value going to be? Because Van Buren's this guy's not getting up after he gets taken down once. It's not going to be a rinse and repeat affair. I'll be shocked if this guy can get up. So where is the value going to really come? So I like him. He's a lock for cash, but there is a gray area there for me with his price tag at 9,800.
One question for me, when Nickel, probably inevitably gets the takedown early in this fight, it's mostly working for submission, right? Based on the history that we have, not ground and pound. Is that right? Am I correct? Yeah. So if that's the case, JSU, that does lower the ceiling a little bit for Nickel. Like we saw that in his first fight, right? He had a bunch of control time and didn't really throw any strikes.
2.5 minutes of control time, but it's all to get the position he wants to get the submission, right? He's not, like you guys said, he's not ground and pounding. Guys aren't getting up either. And like Mad Lab said, if this guy's coming in and, he's 7-0 or whatever, but it's, knockouts and he doesn't really have that much wrestling experience, well, he's definitely not getting up once Bo Nickel takes him down. And once Bo Nickel takes you down, it's just him, finding a way to get you into the submission, and that's going to be it. The question is, how long does it take? If it takes what it took against Pickett and he scores around 100 at $9,800, I would honestly say in tournaments, he's a good fade. Like it actually makes sense.
I don't think he's on the winner with 100 points, honestly.
I don't think so either.
Well, here's my other issue with this. Here's my other issue with this. And he's such a big favorite that this guy's going to come in. Well, then he knows he's got the wrestling in his back pocket. There's not a shot in hell that I call him Wood Bum. Van Bum. There's no way that this guy is going to be able to out wrestle him. He's already said that he's going to try to showcase his striking. Now, do they always do that? Do they always say what they're going to do and they actually do it? No, but he has said in an interview that he wants to show people that he can also strike. So what if he just comes out and strikes? He's just killing time at that point. You know what I mean? That's where there's like a real, when you're fighting a guy that you're a minus 2,500, you might just play with your food a little bit.
Yeah, makes sense.
You might play with your food until he throws one of those big shots and you don't like it. And then from there on, you're like, all right, I'm taking this guy down and finishing him here. But yeah, you're right. He could do that, which again, that's worse in a scoring perspective. So I would honestly not like that. And I could see the fade for DFS though. Again, though, this is what we talk about where do you just take the win? He's a win, right? Mad Lab, like
cash game lock.
Yeah, he's a cash game lock. Do you just lock him in and say, hey, I'm getting my first round win? Maybe he doesn't get the bonus. Maybe he does. If he does, he's going to be probably on the winner. If he doesn't, I still at least have one win out of my 6 fighters in my lineup. That's a conversation. I did this. Joe Anderson Brito from last week was in my head kind of a similar fighter where I was like, this dude's going to win. He's going to win in the first round, I think. He's going to finish him. Do I just take the win or no? I went from, do I lock this guy? Do I play, just over the field with this guy? I ended up going just over the field. I don't know if that was the right move. I mean, that's the question you have. I think this card's a little different though, too, honestly. We did see some favorites lose also last week, so that could have played into it as well. But I think there's a case to be made where you could fade Bo in tournaments just at the ownership he's going to be and hope he scores 100.
I mean, the fact of the matter, Drew, is you can't roster, you can maybe squeeze in 2 of the 9K plus guys, but you can't get 3. And if Nickel is outscored, by 2 of the 9K plus who are also big favorites, you're not going to want him in your DFS tournament teams, right? Sure, for crashing lineups, yes. But when we're talking DFS, obviously, in the ownership, we're talking about trying to get to the very top of the tournament, which is, how these DraftKings tournaments are designed. So I think it is an interesting talking point. And I think the fade, not a full fade, obviously, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, but I don't mind being under the field on Nickel here. What are your thoughts, Drew, and what do you have for the numbers?
Yeah, sometimes it could just be the raw points that he gets. I mean, the ownership-wise, I got him at 35%, so he'll be the highest owned just by a little bit over the upper 9K guys. Woodburn down there at 4%, 4.5%. So, you could have a sprinkle of Woodburn if you think he could get a KO somehow, and that would pretty much lock you up for having the nuts on this slate. But, I think the one thing interesting for Nickel is he's a minus $2,500 favorite, but he got priced before that fight got canceled. So who knows what he would be priced if the actual odds came out prior to the pricing coming out. I mean, he'd be 10-1 or something ridiculous. Yeah. I don't even know if they could price it 10-1, but I mean, he would be, I mean, at 9,800, he's kind of a significant value in my mind at 30%, 35% owned. So yes, there is a path where he's not on the optimal, but I think there's a higher likelihood, over 30% likelihood, that he is on the optimal, and you can mix him with another 9K fighter, like you said. So that's kind of my mindset. I mean, there's a pretty strong chance he finishes in round one via submission. Will he get enough points for that? It's just there's a lot of ifs with that. So I think Nickel at 9,800 is obviously a really great play. It's just a matter of if it's the 140 or the 100 points. And for me at 35% owned, I want to take a shot on being a little bit overweight, and I can still be overweight on the other 9K fighters, some of the other 9K fighters, and have a chance. But I'm not going to fade Nickel in this spot. I just feel like that's a fool's errand at 30%. He's not going to be 60%. Like at minus $2,500 favorite, or 2,500 favorite should be 62% owned. Like he's going to be under owned in my opinion, even with the other good 9K fighters. So yeah, I want to be a little bit overweight Nickel here.
Makes sense. That's Nickel and Woodburn. Let's get to the next fight. Another fun one, I think, here. Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker. Turner coming off a loss. Prior to that, he had been on quite the run. One of my personal favorite fighters, Jalen Turner. Been backing him for a while. He's been good to me in my bets and lineups. But yeah, Turner, pretty big favorite here. Minus 280, minus 300, depending on where you look. Mad Lab, based on our discussions prior to the show, sounds like you might be on the other side of this one a little bit. Your thoughts here on Hooker and Turner?
Yeah, I you know what it is? I think I always say this to everybody, like how soon you forget. You know what I mean? It's like every time these fighters have a little bit of a downtick, it's almost like they're not human. They're washed up, they're done. You know, Dan Hooker's a guy that people fail to remember that when Michael Chandler came into the UFC, 80% of the masses picked Hooker to beat Chandler. You know what I mean? And then now all of a sudden he's a bum. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't make sense to me how I like it from my end, because it moves the line in my direction and it's less ownership in DraftKings and stuff like that. So like I picked Michael Chandler in that fight when they fought, because I was like, people have no idea who Michael Chandler is. Like he's coming from Bellator. So if he's not a UFC fighter, people tend not to know who he is. So I knew Michael Chandler coming in was going to be a very good UFC fighter. But when you see things like we're going to talk about with the Whittaker fight, you know, when everybody was picking Cannonier over Whittaker, like I thought it was crazy. They're doing the same thing with Hooker right now. The guy's fought a lot of tough competition. Has he been through it? Yeah, he's been through it. You know, has he been in a couple too many wars? Yes. But here's the thing. People say he needs to make an adjustment for Turner. That's false. He needs to make an adjustment anyway. He can't continue on this path with this style of fighting that he's been fighting, because it's not working for him. So if he wants any sort of longevity in his career at 33 years old, to go a little bit longer and extend his career, he needs to start fighting safer. He needs to start fighting smarter. So whether it's Turner or it's someone else, his style needed to change, and it needs to change. So, you know, with this fight, you know, should Turner win this fight? Yeah. You know, I mean, listen, the guy's got very good range striking. He's a lot longer. You know, people who are saying that he missed weight because he gained muscle, like that's the most ludicrous statement in the world. You're not giving up 20% of your fucking purse that feeds your family because you gained muscle. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even make sense. So I do think Hooker has a shot here. I do think he's a very, very live dog in this spot. I think he needs to get underneath early. He needs to crash the pocket. He needs to tear a page out of Gamrot's book and make it a close phone booth fight where he takes away the long range of Turner. But what he needs to do is when he takes his shots inside, he can't come in on the center line. He's got to come off on angles, because Turner's got the nasty knees up the middle. You know, so I think if you're going to know, I said this on my podcast, you're going to know in the first 2 minutes if he's going to win this fight or not. If he stands at range and he's sitting at real estate with Turner's going to chew him up and eventually knock him out. But if he comes into this fight and he starts going right to the clinch, starts looking for takedowns, starts keeping it close, doesn't allow him to extend, I think it's Hooker's fight to win. Like, I really, really do. I think it'll be Hooker's fight to win at that point.
Yeah. Turner in his last fight against Gamrot, like, you got wrestled a little bit. That's kind of Turner's, that's his bugaboo a little bit. You know, he's obviously an explosive fighter, great athlete, chokes, all that stuff, but he can be grinded out, I think is his biggest problem. And JSU, Hooker does have a couple fights not so long ago on his card with takedowns. If he utilizes that strategy that Mad Lab was talking about, yeah, maybe he could pull off this upset. So your thoughts here, Turner and Hooker?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Dan Hooker, when you just look at who Dan Hooker's faced, too, I mean, let's not get confused here. He's faced some really good competition here. I mean, look at some of his losses, Allen, Makachev, Michael Chandler. We're not knocking him for some of these losses here that he's had and he's faced, and he's won against some tough competition as well. So it's not like he's faced scrubs or anything like that. Definitely better competition, but I think the question, like you guys said, is he going to stay at range? If he stays at range, then it's a problem here. So I would just tend to lean. I'm a huge Jalen Turner fan. I just think he's the better fighter overall and the fighter I'm going to back here in. But for DFS, I think this is a good fight to have exposure to both sides, honestly. I'm not saying, it's different betting in DFS, who you're on. And I think this is a fight where Mad Lab laid it out. Dan Hooker is alive. This dude's tough. He has the ability to win. So for DFS at 7,400, I think you'd be silly to fade Dan Hooker at that. I don't know why Siri's talking, but you could be silly to fade Dan Hooker at that price tag at 7,400. So I'm going to be more in the camp of I want exposure to this fight. It's not a fight I'm going to lock, but I'm going to have exposure to both sides of this fight in DFS. My pick will be Turner. I do think Turner stays at range and has success, and Dan Hooker is very hittable at times. We know that, and it's probably going to be what gets him in trouble in this fight, I think. But good fight for DFS, I do believe.
I'm with you. I think you want one of these two fighters, for me at least, in most of my lineups. You look at what Turner has done in his wins scoring-wise. Drew 117, 106, 112, 125, 107, 129. So he's gotten there really in all of his wins. So, yeah, I think if he wins, there's a good chance it's early. He scores well. And on the other side, I think Hooker, if he pulls the upset at that price point and the way he would do it, I think he could be on the optimal as well. So I do think the winner of this fight has a good chance to get there. What do you have for the numbers here, Drew, between Turner and Hooker?
Yeah, I love this fight, man. I think the ownership sets it up so you can be overweight a little bit and not, you're not emptying out the bank. So Turner, I got at 28%, and Hooker, I got at 13%. So yeah, I'm with you on Turner. I think Turner's the better fighter, most likely gonna finish inside the distance. But I could see a path where Hooker, stays on his feet and lays a couple of punches and can win this at 7,400. Like, he's still a decent price dog, but 13% ownership. I mean, you're actually getting significant leverage on just a decision win at that price. So yeah, both sides of this are fantastic. Jalen Turner's underpriced where his price is and his upside. He's got the most upside, I think, in this 8K range. So yeah, Turner's my pick, but both sides of this fight, I think, should be a target.
Yeah, should be a fun one there. And really, man, this main card is absolutely loaded on the pay-per-view side. Excited for all these fights, including the next one. Robert Whittaker, big favorite over Dracus du Plessis. Whittaker, minus 350 to 400. Du Plessis is undefeated in the UFC, 5 straight wins, 4 of which have come inside the distance. He scored very well for DFS purposes. Fun one here. Whittaker, obviously no slouch, big favorite. What do you got here, Mad Lab?
I mean, I love Whittaker. Whittaker is such a well-rounded fighter. He still doesn't get the credit he deserves. That's the crazy thing about him. We talked about it briefly earlier, how when he lost to Izzy, they literally jumped on Cannonier, and everybody was on Cannonier thinking that, and I remember the headline of my article was how soon you guys forget. Like, how soon you guys forget how great Robert Whittaker is. So this is a spot here where this is lunch for him. I mean, I never thought du Plessis was a good fighter. Never really did at all. I thought he gassed out. I thought he was mediocre at best. He doesn't have great grappling. He doesn't have great striking. He doesn't do anything really great. I mean, he's a tough dude. I mean, he's tough. He's got some certain skills everywhere, but he doesn't really excel in anything. This is a major step up in competition for him. I mean, if you look at his resume, Brunson, Till, Tavares, Giles, Marcus Perez, who's not even in the UFC anymore. Like, this is not like here to here. This is like here to here. You know what I mean? So I don't see a world where he beats Whittaker unless A, Whittaker's takes it, gets old overnight. B, he's injured because he knows he tends to get riddled with injuries and sickness sometimes. Or C, he just slips on a banana peel and gets caught. Like, this is my problem with this fight is Whittaker hasn't finished anyone since 2017. That's my problem with this fight. You know what I mean? So, when you got a guy like Duplessis who crashes the pocket, who's reckless, who's young, he's very strong. Whittaker's going to want to try to stay outside and kind of just like, sting him at range and try to utilize his technique more than anything. Then if he crashes the pocket, he could grapple with him and he could wrestle with him. But that's my fear. My fear at 9,100, is it going to be one of those fights where he's going to fight very strategic and he's not going to embrace like some kind of structured chaos? So there is a fear there for him. Do I think Whittaker can finish him? Yes, but if he does, he's not going to finish him until the second half of the fight. And then I don't know at that point in time, is it going to be too late? So I do like Whittaker to win the fight, but there is also a gray area for this, for this as well. As far as Duplessis, I mean, I never say fade people, but like I said, the outside of those three scenarios I just gave you, he just ain't it. He ain't the guy to beat Whittaker.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think Whittaker gets the job done here, but I also think JSU Whittaker, my guess is he doesn't score all that well in this fight. So, yeah, I'm kind of leaning fading here. I do think, listen, if Duplessis does pull the upset, he's going to, I think, probably get a pretty big score. But your thoughts here, Duplessis and Whittaker?
I agree. If he did win, I do think it's a big score too. But I just don't think he has the level of technique that he's going to need to beat someone like Robert Whittaker. That's going to be the key in this fight. And I think Whittaker, I think he's just better. You know what I mean? I don't really like Duplessis, so it's good to hear Mad Lab. He kind of agrees with me there that he's not at that level. And that's what I see too. I mean, Whittaker hasn't lost since Izzy. I mean, we're talking a while ago too. Like, this dude is a legit levels, I think, ahead of Duplessis, and we'll see it here. The question is, how does he score for DFS? And I kind of agree with you that the way I'm looking at it anyways, unless he somehow gets a ton of takedowns and control time, which I don't see, because I think he will just kind of sting him at range. He's going to be very strategic about how he attacks him. Because Duplessis, the way I think the best way for him would be, like, honestly, to not make this a technical fight in ways, because he's just going to get outclassed if that's the case. If it's a technical fight, Whittaker's winning this thing, and it doesn't matter where the fight goes. He's going to win. So I see it as Whittaker decision here. But, I mean, that's just, I think that's the easy outcome here. I don't see a finish for Whittaker. I'm probably going to be under on this fight in general, just because, like Mad Lab said, if we think, he's levels ahead of Duplessis and we think he's going to lose, I'd rather put my shots on Dan Hooker, Robbie Lawler in that range, a few other guys that we'll talk about in a second, for sure.
Yeah, one betting prop I do like for this fight, Whittaker to win the fight in round 3. I think Duplessis got a decent chance to gas late in this fight. Plus 900 for Whittaker to finish in round 3. I like a little bit as a long shot bet. Drew, let's throw it over to you. What do you see, Duplessis and Whittaker?
Yeah, Whittaker right at 20%, just under 20%, and Duplessis at 24%. So a pretty popular dog. And to be fair, he's probably my least favorite, probably second least favorite dog behind Woodburn down there. So yeah, I think Whittaker wins the fight. It's just a matter of, does he get enough points, and does fighters above him get significantly more points? I think that's the tough part for me. Raw projection wise, Whittaker's not gonna. He doesn't project out as well as, paying up for Saman, who's only $300 more. Mm-hmm. And but there's a lot of levers there. I mean, he's only 20% owned. So I think he's an interesting pivot off of some of those guys. But again, if all the favorites win, like we said, it's going to come down to who gets the nuts at 140 or 130 points. And Whittaker is kind of a fringe play. It's just at 20%. I want to have a little bit. I think he gets the job done. But it's hard for me to say you would take Whittaker overpaying up if you can to Samon or obviously Tara and Nickel. So.
Yeah,
right.
Sounds like we all got somewhat similar thoughts there. Whittaker and Duplessis. Expect Whittaker to get the job done, but maybe not score super well, at least for his price point in DFS. Let's get to the two final fights, two title fights here, Brandon Moreno and Pantoja, Alexander Pantoja. It is Moreno, decent favorite, minus 200. This one actually kind of a coin flip, whether it finishes inside the distance or not. Certainly excited to watch this one. Let's throw it to you first, Mad Lab. What do you see, Pantoja and Moreno?
So the first thing I want to say with this is a lot of guys, they go with the rematch. Like they look at it, this is like the trilogy. You know, they fought once in 2016 where Pantoja subbed them. Then they fought in 2018 and Pantoja won by a decision. You know, so they look at that and are like, well, he's got his number. If you go back and you watch that time that they fought to Moreno's fight now against Figueiredo, he's not the same human. Moreno is just not the same human. From a striking perspective, he was always a good grappler. But from a striking perspective, somebody who's boxed my whole life, like I watch certain things. I watch their foot placement. I watch the way they create angles, how they generate, power and stuff. And they pretty much took an eraser, erased his entire striking and rebuilt it to what he is right now. So like, you can't look at that. And I know people say like 70% of the time, the guy from the last fight won, and I get it, but that's also back to back. It's not years, 5-6 years later, But also Pantoja also has gotten better, as the time goes on. And this is a guy who I call the Roberto Duran of MMA. This guy is just a savage who doesn't get the credit that he deserves. You always had like the Sugar Ray Leonards and everybody getting the shine. And Duran was always like that Marvin Hagler type fighter. And that's what Pantoja is in the UFC. A lot of people don't give this guy any shine. Don't understand why, but I think, there could be like the business end of it. He doesn't really do interviews and stuff like that. But this dude's grappling is on such a different level than Moreno, than majority of the people in the UFC. He's probably got top 5 grappling in the UFC. Like this guy's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is literally off the charts. And the thing with Moreno that scares me in this fight, that he's been in Figueiredo land a little bit too long. When you have 4 of your last 5 fights fighting the same exact guy, like you tend to fall into that trap of that blueprint. Pantoja is a completely different person than Figueiredo, like completely different. But Moreno's been in Figueiredo land for 4 or 5. That's a long fucking time. 5 fights and you fought the same guy 4 times. So I just think Pantoja is a little bit hungrier here. I think everybody has their time. I'm not saying Moreno can't come back and win the belt for a 3rd time, but I've always been a huge fan of Pantoja. I know how dangerous he is. It's very scary to know that there's 5 rounds here. Moreno's lived there, and Pantoja does have a tendency to tire out a little bit. But I just think the stars are aligning for, this is, everyone has their time. Pantoja deserves this. I think he does win this fight. I think he's a little hungry, and I love both of the prices at 7,500 and 8,700, because if Moreno wins, Moreno's going to either tack him with something or he's going to bring this to the cards. It's going to be a high volume fight. And if Pantoja wins, I could see him subbing him, or I could see it being a high volume fight going to the card. So this is, without a doubt, a fight that I'm going to be targeting hard.
Yeah, that's not just that too, like reversals and stuff like that.
On
DraftKings, and you're gonna, if Moreno, if this goes to the cards, you're gonna see reversals. You're gonna see all that type of very high level type fight here, where it's gonna score. So I agree with you. Like this is a good fight to. I don't know if maybe you could say I want one of these 2 fighters in all your lineups, especially if you like the dog at these price tags. I don't hate it either, for sure.
JSU, Moreno didn't score super well in those Figueiredo fights. You think this is going to be a different story, though?
I think it is, just because of the style in which we just talked about Pantoja fights at. I think you're going to see like if it goes to the cards and it doesn't get finished, I think we're going to see a lot of just high level reversals, sweeps, all that type of stuff, and that does score well. So it's just a different fight, like a different fighter, like Mad Lab was saying. I do have Pantoja as well inside the distance here. For DFS, I'm going to be heavy on him too. I agree with him. You watch that Perez fight, like he just ran through that dude. I mean, like he had no respect for it. He just jumped right in his face, just threw a couple shots. His hands were not even, it felt like they weren't even up. He took one and then just like tripped them. And trying to scramble, he got his back. Like, don't give when you give your back to Pantoja, especially early when they're dry like that, that's you're done. Like you're done. He's gonna backpack you, and then he's gonna crank that neck or the choke, and that's what he did. Honestly, like I don't even know. It literally looked like his head was sideways when he cranked that choke. Like it just.
Yeah, it wasn't under his chin. It was like a jaw crank.
Yeah, it was a jaw crank, and it was super painful, I'm sure, but it wasn't like he was going to sleep. Right? He just, dude's nasty there.
Well, that's how Habib submitted Conor.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know. This is a good fight though to target, in my opinion. I'm going to be overweight in DFS. I'm going to be overweight on Pantoja, and I'm picking him too.
All right. A couple picks for Pantoja to possibly pull the upset here. Drew, what do you see numbers-wise between these two?
Yeah, it might be a moot point. Sounds like we're all going to be on the fight, but I got Moreno at 33% and Pantoja at 30%. So, yeah, I'm not going to reiterate everything you guys said. Pretty much on the same page. It's a good fight to target for tonight.
All right, let's get to the main event of the card. Alex Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. It is Volkanovski, pretty big favorite in this one, almost minus 400, minus 370 or so. This one, another one that the market thinks has a decent chance, though, to go to the cards. I personally think Volkanovski wins this one pretty easily, but let's throw it over to you, Mad Lab. Rodriguez, Volkanovski, what do you see?
Yeah, so first thing I want to tell you guys is when you guys look at Volkanovski's fights or any fight, you got to look at why are these people picking Yair? Well, what is there? You got to ask them why. And a lot of time these people are going to say, well, he's the longer, rangier guy. He's dynamic. He's longer. He's got longer arms. He's rangier. That's where you guys can kind of cut him off and say, well, no, that's not the truth, because Volkanovski has never fought anybody, as small as his stature is, has never fought anybody that had a longer reach than him. He's got a freakishly long reach for his size. So in this fight, their reach is both 71, 71. He's fought Holloway. He's fought so many guys. Nobody's had the reach on him. One guy in his entire career has had the reach advantage on Volkanovski because he's got these freakishly long arms. And he knows how to use it. And that's very deceptive in the cage, because when you see a shorter guy and then all of a sudden you're expecting like the depth perception to be here and it's 4 inches longer, it kind of throws you off. But if you look at Yair Rodriguez, where is he dangerous? Because he's a question mark. You can't train for him. But if all his fights that he wins, look at the guys he beats. Josh Emmett, plotting fighter. Brian Ortega, much more of a grappler. Jeremy Stevens, plotting fighter. Jeremy Stevens, again, plotting fighter. Zombie, kind of in between, but Zombie was winning that fight before that lucky elbow happened, which that was lucky. That was not a time thing. That was a completely lucky elbow. Then obviously, if you go down, he fought BJ Penn when he was washed, Alex Charez. So all the guys that he's beaten, they're kind of plotting, just stand in your face, kind of just throwing punches. They let you kind of dictate the dance. The guys that he loses to, the Max Holloway, super active, Frankie Edgar, spastic and super active, that's Volkanovski. Volkanovski's not going to allow him to go just north, south, and east and west whenever he wants. It's not going to happen. If he sees that happening, he's going to jump forward. He's going to jump into the pocket. He's going to take him down, and he's going to start using that wrestling that he started his career with. So I think outside of Yair landing like some nasty up elbow or something fucking really flashy, and because listen, we've seen Alexander Volkanovski rocked. He's great. He's pound for pound one of the best, but we've seen him rock. Like, let's not be blind and say he can't be knocked out. He absolutely can be, but I just don't see it. I don't think it's this kid's time. I think he's a very good fighter. I like the way he matured. He's not a trash talker no more. He's very respectful. He's going to have his time, but this ain't his time, man. I think Alexander Volkanovski beats him. I think he possibly has a mimicking performance of the old school Frankie Edgar performance, where Frankie Edgar later in the fight just started literally fucking putting it on him. So I think that could possibly happen here. So it's going to be Volkanovski for me, either by decision or he's going to end up stopping him in the championship rounds, like a referee stoppage.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I think Volk gets the job done here. I think he's better everywhere. JSU, your thoughts, Volkanovski and Rodriguez?
Yeah, I think one thing, too, that's going to be huge for Volk is the fact that he just got off training to fight Islam and the wrestling. Like, I think the wrestling is going to be a huge thing for Volk, and the fact that he just trained to fight a guy like Islam, who he knew he was going to have to wrestle. He's going to have to now he's going to be able to employ that here in this fight, which I think is going to be the biggest key for him, honestly. So I agree with Mad Lab. Like, that's going to be where I think he shows it, honestly. And I think he's going to score well, too, in a win if he does wrestle and he gets takedowns, too. So I'm really high on Volk. I mean, this is a good fight, though. If I'm on Volk, I think Volk wins here. I think Volk wins by decision, but it's handily by decision here. I think he dominates here against a good fighter in Rodriguez. No respect. I just think he's going to show that he's not ready for this yet, that type of fighter. I mean, some people believe Volk won against Islam. Like, I don't know. I watched that fight. Yeah. It was close. I don't know, Mad Lab, do you believe that Islam won? Or
I had Islam winning the fight. I don't see where the robbery thing came in. I could see an argument.
I wouldn't say robbery.
Well,
I'm saying
people how
close.
He got robbed. He got robbed.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
I thought it was a close enough fight where if it did go to Volkanovski, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash. I'd be like, okay, yeah. I thought Islam won, but okay. But let me ask you the question, Jesus. All you guys, does it concern you a little bit in this fight from a DraftKings perspective that Yair Rodriguez, when you look at him, like when he gets into the cage, he's the Riddler, right? He's got the question marks. You don't know what he's going to do. What if Alexander Volkanovski kind of heaves his pressure a little bit because he's nervous about the counter striking, he's nervous about the up elbows, the knees, the flashing. What if he decides to play it safe and just kind of sting him from the outside?
I think Volk's going to wrestle here, is what I think is going to happen. But in that case,
but he's notoriously known. He's notoriously known to fight you at your own game.
Yeah. That's the one thing. But the good thing is it is 5 rounds, right? He could just, you could get the volume over time, even if he does start off that way. It's a little worrisome. I do feel confident, though, that I do think he's going to try and wrestle Rodriguez. I just feel like that's his path. He just got off that Islam fight. I think that's going to help him here from that camp, training to fight Islam. I think that's really going to be the key.
Yeah. Let's throw it to you, Drew. What do you got for ownership between these two, and who's your pick to win this one?
Yeah, Volkanovski I got at 40% and Rodriguez at 30%. So I'm struggling to see Rodriguez at 30% at 7K with everything, the numbers behind it, even for a 5-round fight. So yeah, Volkanovski's my pick to win here. And 40% owned. It's not too bad for a 5-round fight if he gets all the volume.
All right. That will do it for this show. 90 minutes of fight analysis. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't yet done so. Summer 33, if you want to join us over at Run Pier Sports. And we'll, of course, be back next week for the next UFC card. Thanks to Mad Lab for joining us today. And for JSU, for Drew, I'm DC, and we'll check you next time.